The next time you search for a flight, don't be surprised if the price changes right in front of your eyes. Not tomorrow, not next month, now. Because something is happening behind the scenes in global travel that most people aren't noticing yet. But it's already starting to show up in the prices you see when you book a ticket. And what's worse, this isn't a temporary spike. It's a chain reaction, and it's spreading across the entire travel system. Let's start with the first trigger: fuel. Right now, global energy markets are extremely sensitive to instability in the Middle East, especially around Iran and surrounding shipping routes. And here's the part most travelers don't realize: airlines don't buy fuel the way you buy gas. They lock in massive contracts, but those contracts still reflect global market prices over time. So when oil prices move sharply, jet fuel follows. And jet fuel isn't a small expense. For most airlines, fuel can account for roughly 20 to 40% of total operating costs, depending on the route and aircraft type. That means even a small increase in oil prices can force airlines to make immediate pricing decisions. And they only have two real options. Option 1, absorb the cost and reduce profits. Option 2, pass it on to passengers through higher fares and surcharges. And historically, airlines choose option 2 more often than not, which brings back something many travelers haven't seen clearly in years: fuel surcharges. These are extra fees added to tickets specifically to offset fuel costs. They were more common in the early 2000s and mid-2010s, but many airlines reduced their visibility during more stable fuel periods. Now, they are quietly reappearing. Sometimes they're labeled clearly. Other times they're embedded into the fare, so you don't even notice them. But either way, the total price goes up. And that leads to the second major pressure point: flight routing. This is where things get more complex and more expensive, because it's not just about fuel prices anymore. It's about where planes are allowed to fly. In recent years, airspace over parts of the Middle East has become increasingly restricted due to ongoing geopolitical tensions and safety concerns. As a result, airlines are avoiding certain corridors that used to be standard flight paths. And when a plane can't take the shortest route, everything changes. Flights become longer, fuel consumption increases, crew hours increase, maintenance planning becomes more complicated, and every one of those changes costs money. To understand the impact, imagine a flight from Canada to Southeast Asia. Before, that route might have gone over or near parts of the Middle East in a relatively direct path, depending on the destination. Now, many of those flights are rerouted further north or south to avoid restricted zones. That detour can add hundreds of extra kilometers per flight. And even a small detour at cruising altitude translates into thousands of dollars in extra fuel per flight for wide-body aircraft like the Boeing 787 or Airbus A350. Now multiply that by hundreds of flights per day across multiple airlines. And suddenly, the cost isn't small anymore. It becomes structural. That's why we're seeing real price changes show up in ticket data. For example, long-haul routes that previously averaged around $1,600 CAD are now trending closer to $2,000 CAD, depending on season, demand, and routing. That's roughly a $300 to $500 increase per ticket on certain international routes. And that's just one layer. Because airlines don't absorb these costs evenly. They distribute them across fare classes, regions, and time periods, which means some passengers feel it immediately, while others see it gradually over time. But the direction is the same: up. Now here's where the ripple effect starts to expand. Because airlines are not the only part of the travel ecosystem affected by fuel. Cruise lines are next. Cruise ships burn massive amounts of fuel continuously while at sea. Even modern ships with improved efficiency still rely heavily on marine fuel, which also rises when global oil prices increase. And unlike airlines, cruise lines often operate on longer planning cycles. So when fuel prices spike quickly, they have limited flexibility. That's why many cruise operators introduce fuel surcharges or adjustment fees when energy markets become unstable. And that means the same pressure affecting airlines is now hitting ocean travel too. Even river cruises, which were once considered more stable in pricing, are starting to adjust because the entire transportation system is connected through energy costs. But here's where it gets even more important. This is all happening at the exact same time global travel demand is rising again. People are not traveling less, they are traveling differently. Let's look at what's happening with Canadian outbound travel trends. Portugal is seeing an increase of about 57% in bookings. The Netherlands is up around 40%, Italy is up approximately 25%, and Japan, one of the most expensive long haul destinations, is still up around 17%. That tells us something important. Even with higher prices, demand is still strong. But the response from travelers is shifting. Instead of cutting travel entirely, people are changing destinations. More travelers are now choosing regions like Mexico, Central America, and parts of South America, where total trip costs, including accommodation and local transport, remain more manageable. And at the same time, another trend is accelerating closer to home: domestic travel. More Canadians are choosing to stay within Canada for vacations instead of booking international flights. Regions like Atlantic Canada, Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec are seeing increased demand as travelers look for experiences without the added cost of long haul airfare. And then there's the United States. This is where travel behavior is becoming more complex. A growing portion of Canadian travelers are reconsidering trips south of the border. Not because travel has stopped, but because multiple factors are influencing decisions at once: exchange rates, perceived travel friction at the border, political climate concerns, and overall trip cost increases. Together, these factors are shifting where people choose to go, even if total demand for travel remains high. Now, zoom out. What we're seeing is not just a price increase, it's a restructuring of global travel behavior. Higher fuel costs, longer flight routes, stronger demand, and more selective destination choices, all happening at the same time. And that combination is powerful, because when costs rise while demand stays strong, prices rarely go back down quickly. Airlines don't usually reduce fares unless fuel prices stabilize for a sustained period and demand weakens. Right now, neither of those conditions are clearly happening, which means the current pricing environment may not be a temporary spike. It may be the beginning of a new normal for travel costs. So when you see a flight price today and think about waiting for it to drop, the real risk is this: it might not be cheaper later. It might already be the lower end of what that route is going to cost for a while. And that's the shift most travelers are just starting to notice. Not suddenly, not all at once, but in small jumps across every search, across every booking, and across every flight you'll take this year.